For Stoicism, calm is not merely a desirable emotional state, but an essential virtue. It is not something pursued for comfort, but cultivated for freedom. Stoic philosophers such as Epictetus, Seneca, and Marcus Aurelius taught that true human freedom is born the moment we learn to clearly distinguish what is within our control from what is not. Without this distinction, the mind remains in constant conflict with reality. Restlessness, anger, fear, and anxiety arise precisely when we attempt to control what does not depend on us. We try to control other people's behavior, external events, chance, outcomes, and even the past. Calm, on the other hand, emerges when we accept a strict boundary. We take full responsibility only for what truly belongs to us, our thoughts, our judgments, and our actions, and release everything else. In this chapter, we explore the first 3 lessons of calm through the lens of Stoicism, not as distant or abstract philosophy, but as a practical discipline meant to be applied daily. Stoicism does not promise the absence of pain or hardship. Instead, it teaches something far more powerful: how not to become a slave to suffering. According to the Stoics, it is not events themselves that disturb us, but the judgments we attach to them. Events, by their nature, are neither good nor bad. They simply occur. Epictetus taught that reality is neutral and that suffering begins only when the mind steps in and assigns meaning. Words such as unbearable, unfair, or unacceptable do not describe the event itself. They reveal the interpretation we place upon it. And it is this interpretation that generates inner turmoil. The mind, left unexamined, reacts automatically. It judges before understanding. It labels before observing. In this process, neutral situations are transformed into personal threats. What could have been endured becomes intolerable. What could have been accepted becomes a source of resentment. The Stoics recognized that this habit of unconscious judgment is one of the main causes of human suffering. Calm arises when we learn to interrupt this automatic mental reaction. When something happens, the instinctive response is emotional: fear, anger, frustration, or despair. The Stoic response, however, is different. It introduces a deliberate pause. In that pause, the individual steps back from the emotion and asks a simple but decisive question: is this within my control? This question shifts the mind from impulse to awareness. That moment of pause is where freedom begins. It creates distance between the event and the emotional reaction. Instead of being carried away by feeling, the Stoic observes the situation with clarity. Often, that single question is enough to dissolve unnecessary suffering, because it exposes how much of our distress comes not from reality, but from our resistance to it. If something is not within your control, it does not deserve disturbance. To be disturbed by what you cannot change is to surrender your inner peace to external forces. Worrying about outcomes, other people's actions, or the past only multiplies suffering without offering solutions. Acceptance in this case is not weakness, it is wisdom. If something is within your control, then it deserves rational action, not emotional chaos. Anger, panic, and anxiety cloud judgment and weaken effective response. Reason, on the other hand, allows deliberate, virtuous action. The Stoic does not suppress emotion, but refuses to let emotion dictate behavior. This distinction between what deserves acceptance and what deserves action is one of the most powerful principles ever offered by philosophy. It teaches us where to invest our energy and where to let go. By respecting this boundary, the mind becomes calmer, clearer, and more resilient. Calm, in this sense, is not passive surrender, but intelligent alignment with reality. The calm person, in the Stoic view, does not deny reality or escape from it. They accept reality as it is. Acceptance does not mean agreement, approval, or passivity. It means clarity. To mentally resist what has already happened is to waste energy fighting what cannot be changed. When you stop demanding that the world behave according to your expectations, the mind finally finds rest. Much of human suffering comes not from reality itself, but from the silent insistence that reality should be different. Expectations become invisible rules imposed on life, and when life refuses to obey them, frustration arises. Calm appears when those demands are released. At that point, calm no longer feels like something you must chase, force, or manufacture. It stops being a fragile emotional state and becomes a natural consequence of alignment with reality. When the mind accepts things as they are, not as it wishes them to be, inner resistance dissolves and peace follows without effort. Mastery of judgment is the true beginning of self-mastery. The Stoics understood that events themselves have no power over us. It is our interpretation that gives them power. Whoever learns to govern their judgments gains authority over their inner world. And whoever controls their inner world controls the quality of their lived experience. Without control over judgment, there can be no lasting calm. The mind becomes reactive, constantly pulled by circumstances, opinions, and emotions. Calm requires stability at the level of interpretation, the ability to see clearly before responding, and to choose meaning instead of inheriting it unconsciously. For Stoicism, reason is the highest faculty of the human being. It is the tool that allows us to distinguish what is essential from what is fleeting. Emotions are not enemies, nor are they meant to be eliminated. But when left unchecked, they become tyrants, ruling behavior through impulse rather than wisdom. Calm emerges when reason regains its rightful place as the guide of action. In this state, emotions are acknowledged but not obeyed blindly. Reason evaluates, directs, and sets limits. The result is not emotional suppression, but emotional balance, a calm that is firm, stable, and deeply rooted. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the mind should remain unshaken, like a solid rock standing firm against relentless waves. The waves may crash again and again, but the rock does not chase them, nor does it collapse under their force. In the same way, emotions rise and fall continuously, but they do not need to dictate behavior. The Stoic mind allows emotions to pass without surrendering control to them. This image reveals a central Stoic truth. Stability does not come from eliminating emotional movement, but from maintaining inner firmness amid it. The Stoic does not deny emotions, nor does he pretend they do not exist. Instead, he observes them with distance, refusing to let temporary states command permanent actions. The calm person feels anger, fear, and sadness, yet does not merge their identity with these emotions. They do not say, "I am angry," but rather, "Anger is present." This subtle distinction prevents the mind from becoming trapped inside an emotional state. Emotions are recognized as passing conditions, not as definitions of the self. By seeing emotions as temporary states rather than permanent truths, the Stoic maintains clarity even in emotional intensity. This conscious observation acts as a safeguard, preventing impulsive reactions and destructive decisions that are often made in moments of emotional overwhelm. The Stoic understands that actions taken under intense emotion almost always lead to regret. When emotion takes the lead, judgment weakens and foresight narrows. Calm, however, creates space, a pause between stimulus and response. And within that space lies true freedom, the freedom to choose wisely, deliberately, and in alignment with virtue rather than impulse. Choosing reason does not mean suppressing emotions or denying their existence. It means placing them in their proper role. Reason evaluates, weighs, and decides based on virtue rather than comfort, impulse, or fear. The more this choice is practiced, the more natural calm becomes. Over time, calm ceases to be an exception and becomes a habit, a stable inner posture toward life. One of the central ideas of Stoicism is amor fati, the love of one's fate. Not passive acceptance, but an active understanding that everything that happens can be used as material for growth and character formation. Mental resistance to fate generates suffering. Conscious acceptance generates calm. When you truly understand that life does not owe you comfort, but offers opportunities for virtue, frustration loses its grip on the mind. The Stoic does not ask, "Why did this happen to me?" because that question traps the mind in resentment and victimhood. Instead, the Stoic asks, "How can I act virtuously in response to this?" This shift in perspective moves attention away from blame and toward responsibility. It transforms crises from sources of despair into opportunities for strength, discipline, and wisdom. By focusing on response rather than cause, the Stoic reclaims inner authority. Events may be outside our control, but our character is not. Every difficulty becomes a moment to practice patience, courage, or self-control. In this way, adversity is no longer an obstacle to growth, but the very path through which growth occurs. Calm arises when we stop fighting what cannot be changed. Time continues to move forward, regardless of resistance. People change, often in ways we do not expect. Relationships evolve, and cycles inevitably come to an end. Suffering increases not because these things happen, but because we refuse to accept that they must happen. Much of human anguish comes from insisting that reality remain fixed while everything around us is in constant motion. The Stoic recognizes that resistance to change is resistance to life itself. When acceptance replaces resistance, inner tension dissolves and calm naturally follows. Accepting fate does not mean abandoning effort, ambition, or responsibility. It means aligning expectations with the true nature of life. We continue to act, to strive, and to improve, but without the illusion of permanence or control over outcomes. Everything is temporary. Everything is impermanent. When this truth is fully embraced, the mind becomes lighter, more resilient, and profoundly calm. When this truth is deeply internalized, anxiety weakens. Calm settles in as the natural state of a prepared and disciplined mind. Stoic philosophy was not created for comfortable times. It was forged in eras of political instability, exile, slavery, and constant proximity to death. For this reason, its vision of calm is neither naive nor romantic. It is practical, uncompromising, and deeply realistic. For the Stoic, calm is a daily discipline. It does not appear spontaneously when circumstances are favorable. It is built precisely in adversity. Every difficulty becomes a training ground for the mind. Seneca taught that suffering does not originate in pain itself, but in the resistance we create against it. When the mind fights reality, it fractures. When it accepts reality, it strengthens. Calm is born from this lucid acceptance. In a long video, this truth must be felt, not merely understood intellectually. The listener must sense that Stoic calm does not promise constant happiness, but something far more enduring, inner freedom. Freedom from being enslaved by others' opinions, freedom from being destroyed by inevitable losses, freedom to move through chaos without losing oneself. Stoicism deeply values silence, not external silence, but inner silence. A noisy mind is easily manipulated. A silent mind observes, evaluates, and responds deliberately. Marcus Aurelius wrote his meditations not for an audience, but for himself. They were daily exercises in inner silence, aligning reason with action. This habit alone is a profound training in calm. Inner silence allows thoughts to be examined before being accepted as truth. Not every thought deserves belief. Not every emotion deserves obedience. When the mind learns to be silent, calm becomes natural. It is not the absence of thought, but the absence of inner confusion. Much of human agitation is born from a wounded ego. The constant need for recognition, validation, and control creates chronic tension. Stoicism teaches us to reduce the ego to what is essential. Epictetus reminded us that we are not special in the eyes of the universe. This is not an insult, but a relief. When we stop placing ourselves at the center of everything, the burden becomes lighter. Calm arises when you realize that you do not need to win every argument, correct every mistake, or constantly prove your worth to others. Much of inner agitation is fueled by the ego's endless demand for validation. The need to be right, to be seen, or to feel superior keeps the mind in a permanent state of tension. Calm appears when that demand is released. True value is internal and does not depend on applause, recognition, or approval. When self-worth is rooted within, external opinions lose their power. Praise and criticism become equally harmless. The mind no longer swings between pride and insecurity, and calm becomes stable rather than conditional. For a long video, this reflection is essential because it reveals one of the deepest sources of disturbance, the unchecked ego. The more the ego governs the mind, the more reactive, defensive, and restless a person becomes. The less control the ego has, the more calm naturally takes its place. Calm does not need to be forced when ego-driven impulses are no longer in command. The Stoic understands that provocations are not attacks, but tests of character rather than strength. When someone attempts to provoke you, they are unknowingly offering an opportunity for self-mastery. The real challenge is not to overpower the other person, but to remain sovereign over your own reactions. Each provocation presents a choice, to surrender control to impulse or to maintain inner authority. The Stoic chooses the latter, understanding that true power lies in restraint. By refusing to react impulsively, calm becomes not a weakness, but a quiet form of dominance. Reacting impulsively is failing the test. Remaining calm is passing it. Marcus Aurelius advised imagining the provocateur as ignorant, not as an insult, but philosophically, someone acting without understanding of what is truly good. This perspective dissolves anger before it turns into action. Calm, in this sense, becomes a form of moral superiority. Stoicism never turns away from the idea of death. It confronts it directly. Awareness of finitude brings clarity to life. When you remember that everything is temporary, including yourself, many problems lose their weight. Calm emerges from this expanded perspective. For the Stoic, death is not a tragedy, but part of the natural order. Fearing the inevitable is a waste of vital energy. In a long video, this reflection adds depth and emotional gravity. It invites the listener to place their anxieties into proper proportion, encouraging them to step back and view their concerns through a wider lens. Often we blow up small challenges, magnifying them in our minds until they consume us. The Stoic approach, however, calls us to assess these anxieties not as monumental obstacles, but as fleeting moments, passing storms in the vast sky of life. None of this happens automatically. Stoic calm is not an innate state, but a deliberate and continuous choice. It is a commitment, not just when times are easy, but especially when life presses hardest. The mind does not become unshakable by default. It becomes unshakable through daily discipline, through the small choices made in every interaction, every moment of discomfort, every challenge. Every day, events will arise outside your control. Every day, there will be difficult people, small or great losses and silent frustrations, things that will trigger emotional reactions, that will make you question, make you feel overwhelmed. But these external events are not the enemy. The real challenge lies in how you respond. Each day offers an opportunity to choose. Will you react in haste, or will you respond with reason? Will you let the chaos around you disrupt your peace, or will you remain anchored in calm? The Stoic question remains unchanged. Is this within my control? If it is not, accept it. If it is, act with virtue. This simplicity is what makes Stoicism powerful. It is not easy, but it is clear. Stoic calm is not the absence of emotion, but the presence of awareness. It is the state of someone who understands the nature of life and chooses not to fight it unnecessarily. The three foundational lessons, control of judgment, choice of reason, and acceptance of fate, form the foundation of an unshakable mind. Together, they create an inner structure that does not collapse under pressure, uncertainty, or adversity. Without these pillars, the mind remains fragile, constantly shaken by circumstances beyond its control. Control of judgment is the first and most essential discipline. It determines how events are interpreted and experienced. When judgment is untrained, the mind reacts automatically, amplifying suffering. When judgment is disciplined, the mind remains clear, able to see reality without distortion or exaggeration. The choice of reason over impulse is the second pillar. Reason does not eliminate emotion, but it governs it. It prevents temporary feelings from dictating permanent actions. Through reason, the Stoic maintains balance, acting with intention rather than reactivity, and preserving calm even in moments of emotional intensity. Acceptance of fate is the third and stabilizing force. It is the understanding that life unfolds beyond personal control and that resisting this truth only generates suffering. By accepting fate, the Stoic aligns with reality instead of fighting it. This alignment brings resilience, allowing the mind to remain steady regardless of external change. When these three lessons are practiced together, calm becomes durable rather than fragile. The mind no longer depends on favorable conditions to remain at peace. It stands firm, grounded in clarity, discipline, and acceptance, unshaken by the inevitable movements of life. Stoic calm does not exist in isolation from daily life. It is not reserved for moments of meditation or philosophical reflection alone. It is tested and strengthened in the ordinary flow of existence, in conversations, in traffic, in silence, in loss, and in uncertainty. The Stoic understands that calm must be practiced continuously, not occasionally. Every moment presents a subtle choice, to react automatically or to respond deliberately. Most people live in reaction mode, unaware of how often their emotions dictate their behavior. Stoic practice begins with awareness, the simple but demanding act of noticing what arises in the mind before acting upon it. Awareness creates distance, and distance creates freedom. Without awareness, emotion and action collapse into one. With awareness, a gap appears. In that gap, the Stoic places reason. In a world driven by outrage, noise, and constant stimulation, calm becomes a form of resistance. Not resistance against others, but resistance against manipulation. A calm mind cannot be easily provoked, exploited, or controlled. The Stoic understands that many forces compete for attention and emotional reaction. Media, opinions, conflicts, and expectations constantly attempt to pull the mind outward. Calm resists this pull. It keeps the center intact. This resistance is quiet. It does not announce itself. It does not seek recognition. Yet it is powerful precisely because it cannot be easily shaken. Stoic calm is not fragile serenity. It is emotional endurance. It is the ability to remain steady even while experiencing discomfort. The Stoic does not expect life to be gentle. He prepares instead to be resilient. Endurance does not mean emotional numbness. It means the capacity to feel without collapsing, to suffer without becoming bitter, to endure loss without losing dignity. In this sense, calm is strength refined. Much of modern anxiety is born from the illusion that life should be controllable. When reality refuses to submit to that illusion, frustration arises. Stoicism dismantles this illusion completely. The Stoic understands that control is limited and conditional. Attempting to expand it beyond its natural limits leads only to exhaustion. Calm returns when the illusion of total control is abandoned. What remains is focus, focused effort where effort matters, and release where effort is wasted. Stoicism teaches an economy of inner energy. Emotional reactions are costly. Anger, resentment, envy, and anxiety drain vitality without producing clarity. Calm conserves energy. It redirects attention toward what is useful, constructive, and virtuous. The Stoic learns not to spend emotional energy on what cannot be changed. This conservation is not passivity, it is efficiency. Ancient Stoics practiced voluntary discomfort to strengthen calm. Cold, hunger, simplicity, silence, these practices were not punishments, but training. By experiencing discomfort intentionally, the Stoic weakened fear of hardship. Calm grew not because discomfort disappeared, but because fear lost its grip. The lesson was simple. If you can remain calm in chosen discomfort, unchosen discomfort becomes less frightening.